Minister was telling a story about time he was on an airplane and they had a lot of turbulence. And the plane is getting more and more turbulent and people are getting very worried and a little scared, even the stewardesses. So they actually look at the passenger list, find him as a minister and go up to him and ask, can you do something religious? So he passed the plate for a collection. Okay, please repeat after me. I am open to the evolution of my soul. I am open to the evolution of my soul. My mind is alert. My heart is receptive. My next step is here and now. Good, 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 good. I'm here to talk to you today about the power of the soil and the disappearing of the of the screen. Each of us has a seed. We were born with something special. But where that seed is planted makes a huge amount of difference. So scientists, they look into seeds and they can see that there's life in those seeds. An apple seed will grow into an apple tree and bring apples. An acorn will grow into an oak tree. But where the soil that those seeds fall into make a huge difference. If the soil, if a seed falls into a path on a road, bird's going to eat it. Now that's very similar to if you have a dream and you go tell somebody that dream and the first thing they do is tell you all the reasons you can't achieve it. That's a dream killer. That's like your seed being eaten. So in our movement, well, in New Thought in general, they talk about, there are some teachers out there who talk about how you don't want to share your dream for that very reason. But I say, no, that's not the reason not to share your dream. What you need to do is find the right soil, the right people, surround yourself with the right environment so that when you share your dream, they will support you in a way that will lift you up. That will have you be who you go, yes, you can do that. You can do that. So it isn't about not sharing your dreams. It's about not sharing them with the wrong people. And it's not only about not sharing them with the wrong people. It's about not being around those people. You don't want to be around dream killers. If a seed falls on rocky soil, it may actually survive. But growing to its full potential is going to be really hard. That's like hanging around people who complain all the time, who are always looking at the negativity of life, who are looking at, what's wrong with everything. And so that can bring you down. And once again, you become in a place where you can buy into some of that. Now, we in Science of Mind talk all the time about rising above, that we actually have the power in any given moment to change our thinking, change our lives, and thus rise above that kind of impact from others. But in the areas in which you have a choice of who you hang out with, it becomes way easier to fulfill the full destiny that is yours to have when you hang around people who back you in that, who are positive, who say that you are a powerful, creative, spiritual being and that you can actually have what it is you want in life. So get away from those people who are complaining all the time. Don't hang around with gossipers. Don't hang around with people who think, that life just doesn't work out. You want to hang around with people who know that it does. Because then that gives you the opportunity to have your life rise. Seed falls into soil where there's lots of weeds and thorns, it's going to get strangled. It's not going to get the nutrients it needs because it's fighting too much for them with all these other things. That's like hanging around people who are always putting their needs first, who are constantly saying, what about me? and never there really to support you, but are so happy to have you support them time and time and time and time again. You don't want to be around people like that who are strangling your time, your dream. You want to make sure that you're around people who are going, what can I do to support you in your dream? What can I do to lift you up? What can I do to have your life grow into the powerful, creative, spiritual being and see your dreams realized? Then there are those who think they don't need soil at all. There are a lot of people who think they need to do it on their own. And I say to you, no. I say to you that soil is necessary. The environment you are in is necessary for our growth. Now, of course, in our teaching, again, you can always, we have within our teaching the exception of being able to rise above. But why? When there are so many folks who really want to support you in having the life of your dreams. Heard a story about a guy who was riding to work every day, an hour. And every day he listened to political radio, talk radio, where there were people who were disrespecting each other and yelling at each other. And he'd arrive at work every single day riled up. 20 years. Did this for 20 years. Showed up at work every day, riled up, upset, mad, bitter. Turned into a really bitter, angry man. His coworkers didn't want anything to do with him. He hardly liked himself. One day, he's listening, going through the channels, and he comes across a uplifting message. And he listens to it, and he gets hooked into it. And for the next year, instead of listening to the political station, listens to that station. And it lifts him up to the point where people at work are going, what happened to you? You seem so happy all the time now. You seem like fun. What happened? And what he did was shift his environment. Because when we do that, when we find a place, the difference between us and seeds really is we have choice where we plant ourselves. Seed doesn't. It gets blown by the wind. But we can actually pick ourselves up and move. If we find ourselves in a path where we're being eaten by dream killers, we can get up and move. If we find ourselves landing on rocks around people who are complaining and negative and bitter all the time, we can move. If we're listening to a radio station that is constantly with people arguing and putting down and looking at the negativity of life, change the station. Listen to something that will lift you up. It makes a difference. It feeds your soil. It feeds your environment. And the more you feed your environment, the more you feed your soil, the better you're given your chance of reaching your destiny. You don't want to hang around people who are bringing you down. And you may say, geez, they're like friends. I've known them forever. How could I just stop being with them? Well, you have your destiny. You actually have a responsibility to the gift that you came into this world with. It is your responsibility to nurture that gift that is uniquely yours. And the way to do that is to nurture your soil. That's what I did the first time I walked into a Science of Mind center. At that point in my life, I was recently divorced. I didn't have a job. I had very little self-esteem. I was feeling horrible about myself. And I walked into a Center for Spiritual Living, and the guy sitting behind the desk just looked up at me and smiled and said, "You're brilliant. You're pretty dark at the moment, but I can see you're brilliant in there." And I kept coming back and talking to him more. In fact, I realized hanging around those people who were hanging around that center was really going to do well by me in terms of lifting myself up. So I started going more often, started volunteering, started taking classes. And I just kept going back, and all of a sudden I got work, my life started to grow, things started to change, until all of a sudden I stuck around there so long, I became a minister. And I'll tell you what, coming out here and being here in this place and having the most amazing wife that I've got and this job, being here with you people, what a great job. Talk about being in your calling. I get to talk to people all day long about what's great about them, what can lift them up. Or if there's a blockage, say, hey, maybe if you thought about this a little differently. What a fun way to spend a day. What a fun way to spend a life. Now, what's your dream? What is your vision? What is your reason for being? And make sure you have people supporting it. And if you don't know, make sure you have people who's going to support you so you can know. Because that's what lifts us up. That's what makes this life so incredible, and that's what gives us the opportunity to constantly move on. Oprah knew this. I talked to you guys about that last week. She raped at 9. Sexually molested by her mother's friends. She got out of there as soon as she could. She knew she could change her soil. She knew she could change to how she was not being supported, to find a place where she could be supported so she could lift herself up to become one of the most successful people on the planet. She didn't start out that way. That's the beauty of being human, is how we get to lift ourselves up, and how we get to change our situation, how we get to move on. Seeds don't get to do that, but we do. Pay attention to your environment and what surrounds you. Moving right along here. Your destiny is too great to waste. Your destiny is way too great to waste. Every one of us has a gift that is so big inside of us that we can bring forth and make something special out of our lives. But we need to put forth that which will encourage, enrich, nurture, to bring it forth, to make it something larger than whatever it is now. Sometimes that means building, have you ever planted a plant in a pot and then the plant got so big it needed to be repotted? We have trees here. I've planted 4 trees around this place. They were never going to become the trees they could become sitting in the containers they were in. They needed a larger container. Sometimes that's what we need too. We need to see ourselves moving into something larger, replanting ourselves into something bigger. This is what's possible when we come together, when we remind ourselves who we truly are. Heard about a man who had a row of bushes, really healthy bushes. A couple of them in the middle started to shrivel up and die. So he called in a landscaper, had it checked out, and turned out that the soil was contaminated. So landscaper dug out that soil, put in new soil, and the bushes returned better than ever. Because that's what's possible when we're willing to make a stand. Now, in our teaching, we talk a lot about change your thinking, change your life. And it may sound as if I'm talking about changing your circumstances, change your life. I promise you that I am not. Because it is through our thinking that things begin to change and new people start showing up. One of the things that happens when we get rid of what is contaminated is we create the space, even if we're lonely for a while, to something new showing up. This is what happened to Laura, right? We have our own congregant here who showed up here in a pretty bad way, having gone through a pretty bad experience. And she started showing up on Thursdays to what at the time was called the Rise Up Club. And she became pretty regular there. Well, she found that she was getting the kind of support that was really helping her shift things. So then she started showing up on Sunday. Well, then she found she really was getting a lot of support around here. So then she started taking classes. Then she stepped up and started volunteering. And all of a sudden, I'm watching somebody who goes through a very similar pattern to what happened to me when I showed up in the terrible state I was in, and watching her now begin to flourish because she has planted her seed in soil and surrounded herself with people who really support her in lifting up and having the life she really wants. Turn on the house lights, please. That's what's possible here. That's what's possible. Now, this is not just a sales pitch about being here. This is simply an example of surrounding yourself with people who are telling you you can do it. You can do it. Who are not negative, who lift you up, who make you feel better, right? You walk in and they'll point out what's going on and in the end lift you. And that's how you want to be surrounded. And that's how you want to make sure. Now, one of the things that happens in a place like this, some places like this, not here, is you'll walk in, people don't show up when they're feeling down, because if you walk in, what somebody will say to you is, well, how did you create that? Ooh is right. That hurts like all get out. So one of the things you want to make sure is in your soil, and one of the things I make sure of that is here, is love. That we do not confront people when they are down. The last thing you want to do is kick somebody when they are down. You want to lift them up. You want them to feel the love. And that is my commitment to this place, is that when somebody walks in, they feel the love. Now, one of the things that happened when I first showed up here and took over this place a year ago is there was a lot of upset going on. And people gossiping and talking and all kinds of things going on in this place. And you could feel it. You could feel it walking in the door. And so for the past year, there's been many of us who have worked on getting rid of the contaminated soil and putting in new soil that feels nurturing, that feels fertile, that feels uplifting. And all of a sudden, people are coming up to me on a pretty regular basis saying, this place feels different. There's just something different about this place, those that have been around a while. There's just something different going on here. It wasn't easy work. It's not easy. And I'm not talking about going to your friends and announcing, I'm not being around you anymore. I'm talking about slowly but surely just backing off and looking for where you can be uplifted, wherever that may be. So that what's happening in your life is you are feeding the soil you want to be feeding. When we feed our soil with love, and I'll tell you, I had this amazing thing happen recently. We're a polling place. So Tuesday, I was supposed to be here at 6 a.m. to let them in. At 8:30, I realized I was still at home. Now, what you need to know about me to understand how that felt is that I identify myself as being a dependable, responsible, always keep my word person. That's how I see myself, and that is one of my biggest parts of my identity. And so when I was sitting there at my computer, which showed up, today is primary day, my temperature and every piece of blood in my body ran down to my toe. I got up, threw on whatever clothes were nearest to me, and ran on over here, beating myself up like crazy. I had not lived up to my identity of who I am. The first thing my wife did was call me in the car and start telling me how much she loved me and start telling me what a good person I was and that this did not define me. Now, it is true in our movement that we are supposed to be strong enough to do that for ourselves, but having somebody around to do that for you when you are feeling that kicked in the stomach is an incredible thing. And all the way to work, she stayed on the phone. She wouldn't even let me hang up when I wanted. There was a moment in which I wanted to hang up so I could beat myself up more, and she wouldn't let me. She hung on with me all the way here. So I get here a little after 9, go run in, and they're in the building because we have a group that meets here at 7:30 that let them in. I go running downstairs, begging their forgiveness, saying, what can I do to make amends around this? wound up buying all of them Starbucks. And the thing they said was, actually, this happens all the time, so we have a protocol for it. We just set up in the parking lot. So for them, it wasn't that big a deal. But for me, it was gigantic. And yet, having and made me think how well I've planted my seed to be supported in that kind of minute, in that kind of moment by my wife. And then I get here and I get to talk to Trish about it, and she's just making fun of me, and we're laughing like crazy. Like, she's just going on like, oh, you're just human like the rest of us, I guess. And so I got to walk through this event feeling way better about myself than at any other time in my history where I had screwed up that badly, because of the love and support that I have planted my soil in. That's what's possible when we lift ourselves up this way. That's what's possible when you're careful about who you hang out with. I am very, very careful about who I hang out with. I would rather be home by myself than be hanging out with somebody negative who's going to put themselves or anybody else down. I don't care if they're being negative about anything. I don't want to hear it. Now, does that mean not face your circumstances? Not move forward with what's in front of you? Pro football player finds out he has cancer. The first thing he does is make sure everybody in his household never uses that word. He puts up signs all around the house about his healing. He creates a soil and environment of health. And he stands for it vigilantly. Within 2 years, he's back playing ball. Cancer-free. This is what's possible when we're that clear, when we don't allow the negativity in, when we stand for the highest and best of who we are. This is what's possible. It's an amazing thing when we are willing to look at and again, when you look at that, when you look at what he did, right? It wasn't about changing his circumstances. He wasn't focused on what he was going to do to get rid of the cancer. He was focused on his mind, getting clear on his health, getting clear that everything around him stood and reinforced in him the soil of health. Our big thing here is not change your circumstance, change your life. It's change your thinking, change your life. And in changing our thinking, we change our environment so that it supports our thinking. And in supporting our thinking, then things start to change. There are so many people around here who work so hard. The football player knew that about his life. Oprah knew that about hers. Laura knew that about hers. I know that about mine. And there are many people here who know it about this center. When we made those soil changes, I did not do it alone. There are many folks here who supported in that, who grew this place over the past year to be the solid, loving house that it is today. That's what's possible for you in your house. That's what's possible for you where you plant your seed. You have dreams. You have hopes. You have tomorrow. It's all right here with you now. In the seed, ready to be sown. All we have to do is nurture that soil. If you do, you will experience the miracles that many of us see as an everyday occurrence. Thank you. All right, take out what you're going to give and hold it in your hand. You want to hold it in your hand because this isn't just money. This is power. This is presence. This is how we get the law of circulation moving. This is how we support ourselves through supporting the center, through supporting ourselves. This is God in action. And so we do not crumple it up. We do not make it small and just kind of toss it in a thing. We hold it in our hands so that we can know the truth of who we are and the prosperity and abundance that is our lives. And we say together, "Oop. God is this, it actually should be in your programs. God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What we give, we receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am." And so it is.